Hello Internet, Doug Redmond here for Autodesk. This video is going to be going over some tips and tricks for the DECO app that I wrote. And the purpose is to go over some common mistakes that people make or point out some features that most people don't know about. The goal is to kind of make sure you get the most out of DECO. And to get started, I've created this pretty simple UI for a custom object of mine. So here is the UI, here is what it looks like in Vault Explorer. And one of the things you'll notice working with Visual Studio is you have these two views of your UI. You have the design view, which is very WYSIWYG. So you modify things by dragging and dropping or clicking on things. And then you have this other view, this XAML view. That's how you pronounce this, XAML, is XAML. And this is an XML format, which is the same thing. It's the UI, but it's in this XML format, and the XAML is really the true view of the UI. That's the correct representation. The design view is just to kind of help you work more effectively. Usually you're going to be dealing with the design view unless you really love XML. I would recommend just kind of hiding that XAML view. So that's what the little chevron button does. It just kind of hides it, and then you can switch between them through the tabs. But like I said, I'll be sticking mostly to the design view. Okay, so kind of the first thing that you might want to do is make some adjustments to how the UI behaves when you resize things. So here's kind of a new dialog, and it's got my UI in it, and the dialogues are all resizable. But it looks kind of weird if you start moving it around. Same thing with the edit. And the view, maybe you like the view how it is, maybe you don't. It really kind of depends. So let's go and edit the UI to make it work a bit better when we resize things. Okay, the first thing we're going to want to do is readjust the sizes and set the behavior for when we resize the dialog. What you're actually seeing here, it's easier to see in the XAML. The outer part is the user control. Then inside of that we have a grid, and the grid fills up the whole control. So that can make it kind of difficult to know which one to select through the UI. I want to select the user control, not the grid. So I'm going to select the user control, and now I'm going to size it to the size that I want the control to be. And the grid is set to size along with the control. So the fact that I changed the control size means that the grid has changed as well. Now let me select my text boxes here. And what I want to do is set this so that when I expand the dialog, these controls will expand along with it. So one of the things you need to do is you need to set this horizontal alignment to stretch. And then for the width, instead of having a fixed width, you want to delete that out, which will give it a value of auto. And when you do that, it kind of resizes them a bit, so you just move them back to what they were. And then for this button, I want it to be in the lower right corner. And again, it kind of moves it over. I'll move it back in. So, okay, so this is now kind of the resized control. And we could do a quick test by selecting the control again and changing it. So this is what the user's going to see when they move it around. Now, of course, things get a bit weird if they try to make it too small. So what you can do also is you can go to the control, and somewhere around here is a minimum width and minimum height. So we'll set this here as the minimum. So the width, min width, and the min height. Okay. Now it can't get any smaller than that, so that's kind of what we want. Okay. Let's do a quick save of this and go back to Vault Explorer. And now we've got the behavior we want. Now, for the tab view, maybe we don't like that stretching. It kind of looks weird. Now, when I set this up, I just kind of use the same UI for all three. But as you kind of get more into it, you're going to want to make these behave differently, most likely. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to that folder that has all of the XAML files in it. A quick way to get there, which I don't think I documented very well, but you can go to this new UI and then hold down Shift and then click on it, and that will bring up the folder with the UI files in it. So let's do just a copy, and we'll just call this the view. And then we can go back and we can change that behavior again so that we're not doing auto anymore. So we're no longer stretching, and this no longer says auto. Now let's go back and tell DECO to use the new configuration. Now, this restart message, that only applies in cases, I'll go back to the configure here. If I had a blank cell and I put a new value in it, then you need to restart. But if you're taking something that already has a value and changing the value, you don't need to restart in that case. Actually, let me do one more tweak here. I'm going to change the background color just to make it more obvious which one is which. Okay, so I'll save that off here. Come on. Oh, that's edit. That's my own fault. Okay. Okay, so now we do not get the stretch behavior, but if we go to the new dialog, it behaves more like we expect. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is scroll bars. And what I did is I just made this UI really tall. And then to kind of show you what it looks like here, if we go back to the Vault Explorer view and it's not sized right, we might miss some of the controls in the bottom there, right? So it would be nice if there's a scroll bar that let us kind of A, know that there's something there, and then B, some way for us to get there. So to do that, let's use a scroll viewer control, which is, again, it's a container control. You can put other controls inside of it, and it will just handle the scrolling for that. So what we want to do is we basically want to put everything inside of this scroll control, or scroll viewer. And probably the easiest way to do that is through the XAML. Because what I did is I just kind of dropped it in the middle there, but we want to make it on the outside. So let's grab that. And we're just going to mess around with the XML. So by just kind of changing that around, I've put the grid inside of the scroll viewer. And let's get rid of these tags. And if we go back to the design, we now have our scroll bar, and select scroll viewer. There's a setting here that lets us hide that scroll bar if it's not being used. So if we set that to this vertical scroll bar visibility, if we set that to auto, I believe that's what it'll do is it'll only show it if it's needed. So yeah, here we see that the scroll bar is here, but if we make it real big, the scroll bar goes away. Okay, another good way to deal with large amounts of data is to use tabs. You can actually take a tab control and put it inside of your UI. So to do that, we put a tab control over here, and let's expand the control, be a bit wider here. So you can use this add tab feature to add more tabs to your thing there, and you can also manage them. If you go to the tab control, there's this items. If you bring that up, this allows you to manage the various tabs that you have. The header is the little text that's at the top of the tab. So you want to make sure you have that set. I'm going to kind of use unimaginative names here. Tab 1 and tab 2. Okay. So okay, we've got our tabs. Each tab has a grid inside of it. So we want to kind of take our controls and stick them in those grids. So I'm going to activate, which tab is this? Okay, so tab 1 is active, the white one. Kind of hard to see there, but it's in the foreground. So I'll select this property and I'll stick it inside that tab. And that was kind of weird. Let's try that again. Okay, I'm going to try cutting and pasting. So Control X, select the grid, Control V, now it's inside of that grid. Then I'm going to do the same thing for this other property, but I'm going to stick it in the second grid there. Okay. And probably would be best to make that a bit bigger. Alright, select grid. No, select tab control. Alright, it's just a crude example, but I think you get the point. So now you can actually flip between the different tabs inside of your View tab. Okay, another thing people like to do a lot is put their company logos inside of their controls. So that's pretty easy to do. You just grab an image and then drop it in there. and then you have to kind of select the source of the image. Okay, so here's something that's a bit annoying. If you want to browse to the source, which in this case is right here, it gives you this this error. Path is not of a legal form. That, to me, it's just a bug in Visual Studio. However, you can kind of paste the path in here. So yeah, you can just type in the path or copy it in or whatever, and then it'll pick it up then. I don't know why you have to do that. It's kind of annoying, but there we have it. So now you have the logo. Oh, actually, make sure that the logo is where you want it to be. Right now I think it's inside the tab. So I'll just move it into this grid here. Again, it's nice to go to the XAML and make sure that we're, yeah, I don't know why it keeps putting it in the grid. I'll move it outside. Inside the tab control. Okay. Another thing you might want to do is change the opacity of it to make it kind of fade into the background a bit. Not my best work, but whatever. I can play around with a lot of settings like that to try to get the right look. Okay, I want to talk a bit about date values. Now, a good way of working with dates is to use the date picker control. And this works very well for like the new and the edit dialog, where you want the user to click on the control and the calendar pops up and they select the date. And it's all really nice, nice way of doing things. However, for the View tab, the date picker doesn't really make much sense because the controls are disabled. So you can't really pick anything. So for the view control, I would suggest not to use the date picker. Instead, just use a text box. Or actually, you can just kind of copy an existing text box here. And then all you have to do is change the tag value. Another quick tip is if you don't like going through all these controls to find the one you want, if you know the name of it, you can type it in the top and it will take you right to that control. So this is the control I want to bind to. Save that off. So now you get your date value. Now, Vault uses date time values for its properties. So yeah, that time is gonna be there as part of the value. If you don't like it, then maybe you can go back to the date picker control. It's kind of up to you. But it's just wanted to let people know that there's a different way of showing the date values. Okay, so My last tip really it is not about anything to do with Visual Studio. It's more of the issue of how do you distribute these XAML files, because right now it's running off of your local drive, and if you've got a bunch of Vault users, you want to be able to push this out to them so that they can all have the same UI and it's easier to work with. Now there's nothing really built in to Vault to let you do that, but there is another program I wrote called Project Thunderdome, and what that does is it lets the administrator create a package. Well, it lets them package up a lot of various things. It's probably best if I just show you a demo here. You create these packages, and Thunderdome will then push it out to the various Vault users. So Thunderdome does a lot of different things that you can push out, such as grid settings, save searches. I go over that in another video, but as far as DECO is concerned, we want to push out our UI files, the XAML files. Also, we want to push out the settings data so that you know which XAML files go with which custom objects, and which view tabs and which edit boxes and things like that. So you pretty much just want to check the whole thing. DECO can also push out some plugins for Vault. So DECO itself can be part of this package. Now only the administrator can do this. So the administrator goes in, sets all this stuff up, sets the Vault folder to save this thing to, hits OK, and what's happening is all this data is getting basically put together in a single zip file, and then it's put inside of the Vault. Now once that deployment package is in place, everybody else who has Thunderdome, when they go and log in through Vault Explorer, it's going to prompt them to download the updates. And here, let me show you an example of that real quick. So this is what the user will see when they go to log in next. They're going to see that there's updates. So the DECO program's part of that update, as well as all of the UI. So the user hits yes. It downloads everything, hooks them all up, and then you're prompted to restart Vault Explorer again. And now the user will have the DECO program as well as all of those UI files that you just created. So Thunderdome's a nice way to distribute these settings. The only catch is that Thunderdome has to be installed on the user's machine in order for it to pull this data down. If they don't have Thunderdome, they're not going to be able to pull down the DECO settings, and that deployment package will just be sitting there like any other file. So that's it. That's all of the tips and tricks that I have for this video. So hopefully you learned a thing or two.